Thank you for joining today's event, The Future of Education. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors and partners for today's event. Our appreciation goes out to Platinum sponsor Yu Jung International School, our gold sponsors Christian Alliance International School, German Swiss International School, Herald International School Hong Kong, and the Harbor School. Our strategic partner is Top Schools and our supporting organization, WISPA. Thank you. This webinar is on how to prepare your child for top universities and a challenging different future. Moderated by our SCMP news reporter, Thomas Chan, and joining him on the panel are Andrew Finn, Western Co-Principal, Secondary Yu Chung International School, Nick Strong, the Regional Coordinator for University Guidance of Yu Chung International School, Professional Emily Nansen, Director of Undergrad Recruitment and Admissions of Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Now, without further ado, we'll turn the time over to Thomas to start the discussion. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today, and I would like to extend again our welcome to our three panelists, Andrew, Nick, and Emily. So to start today's discussion, the year 2020, last year, has shown that the world as we know has been changing very quickly, and we have to be prepared for it. So by setting the theme, Andrew and Nick, could you tell us a bit how are schools nowadays equipping students with important skills to help them better prepare for tertiary education and maybe their very first job?
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. It's a pleasure to join you this afternoon. We don't particularly know what jobs are going to be available in the future. 10 years ago, if someone was having a discussion with me about app designers, I just wouldn't have known what they were really talking about because that job didn't particularly exist then. But what we do know is the type of skills that students will need. Skills such as collaboration, communication, critical thinking. And at YCIS, through our learning communities approach, we look to develop these skills using strategies like project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. But this isn't at the detriment of the knowledge development. To use all these skills, it's important that we continue to develop students' knowledge. If we want students to communicate well, they're going to have to answer questions intelligently. If we want students to collaborate, they're going to have to bring their knowledge to the table. So it's important that we continue to develop knowledge, but that we supplement this knowledge development by developing these 21st century learning skills by using strategies such as project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. But if I was going to focus on one key skill that I would say is really important at the moment for students in school and universities, that's how to really filter the information they're getting and to validate that information as well. Previously, in the education environment, if students wanted to gain some information, they could attend a school or they could go to a library. Now students have endless amount of information that is at their fingertips with the internet. But how do they make sure that that information is the right information and that they're finding that quickly? And I think that's a real key skill that we have to develop with our students, and they have to feel confident that they're finding the right information out and they're able to access that quickly. Maybe Nick, you'd like to give some specific examples about how the university guidance prepares students at YCIS.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. I mean, I think that there are four things that I want to say in respect of this. The first one is starting early. All the research suggests that the earlier students start to think about their careers, the more likely they are to be successful. And here, for example, we've rolled out a program which actually starts at primary school. So it's in year 6 for us. Now, I'm not suggesting that we start discussing universities at that age, but we start talking to them about the notions of skills, qualities, employability, and so on. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is having a properly structured curriculum. And we've developed a curriculum here of our own, which again, as I indicated earlier, starts from year 6 and runs all the way through to year 13. And it develops and evolves as time goes on. And it only really starts to focus on universities towards the end of that process. But it does focus on helping students make choices. What subjects should we be choosing at IGCSE? What subjects should we be choosing at IB? What are the skills that we need? What are the skills gaps? The next thing I would say are the special initiatives. We have two special initiatives here that we've introduced in the last 2 years, and I think they've been really helpful to students. The first one is the Advanced University Programme, which is about preparing selected students for applying to elite institutions and to very difficult subject choices, so things like medicine, dentistry, and so on. And the other thing that we've developed is the University Transition Programme. So using that time between the students completing their exams and then going on to university, a program which actually helps them to prepare for university education, to start thinking about the way that universities teach their kind of pedagogy rather than that which they've been used to at school. And then the final one, really, I think it's really important that we employ the right kind of staff to deliver these kinds of programs, that we select them very carefully and we make sure that they have the right skills and qualities for doing that. So that's me.
Yeah, so just to add on quickly, I just wonder if Nick could also talk a bit more about how the pandemic has and online learning has sped up the skills to find information quickly and to distinguish which are the correct information.
Sorry, that's the question for me or for Andrew?
For Nick or Andrew, yeah.
Right. Andrew, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's many different ways that we can do this with students as well. I think that their actual use of technology in the future and how that is going to be developed will actually support students to do this a lot easier. I know that the New York Times at the moment are trialing blockchain technology initiative to ensure that the information that they have is validated. But with our students, it's important that we show them how to use the internet properly. Show them which resources they can use that are validated externally, so they know that the information they're receiving is legitimate. And we provide different courses with students and different sessions with them regarding that, so they're very proficient in using them. Yeah,
and something that we do in the Advanced University Programme, which ties in with what students do in terms of theory of knowledge, is actually looking at different ways of looking at information and knowledge and determining, I mean, for example, there may be no right answer to a question. And so that's something which surprises students. But for example, when they get Oxford and Cambridge interviews, often there is no one single answer. It's that ability to be able to approach a problem from different directions and encouraging them to do that.
Thank you very much, Nick and Andrew. We are going to move on to Emily. So you are from the HKUST. From your side, can you also share with us a bit about how Hong Kong universities are currently helping the students to maybe prepare for their next chapter of life?
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Really a pleasure to be here, and glad to talk with my co-panelists and also all the audience, especially those joining us from different time zones. So you were asking me about how universities are preparing students for the future. I think just like before I go into like what are we doing, one is to really think about what the employers expect from these graduates, right? What the society needs. So they will be looking for graduates who are active learners, who can solve novel and complex problems, who can work with people, and who are very flexible because things are changing rapidly. From last year, we can see things could be very unexpected. What we learn in school and at universities will be different from the kind of problem that we face in the future. So with all those background, and of course, employers also look for students who are tech savvy, who can have good communication, who can have social influence. So what universities are doing, places like HKUST. So first, in terms of our curriculum, so we keep coming up with innovative programs. Interdisciplinary, so students not only have one area of expertise, but they also have opportunities to add double major, minors, and things like that. We have a lot of opportunities outside of the classroom. So for us, typical student usually only have 15 to 18 hours of classes, scheduled classes in a week. So the rest of the time they were doing research projects, they are doing different co-curricular activities, leadership, service programs. So all these give students opportunity to train up exactly the problem solving, teamwork, and communication skills. And there's a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child, and it's totally true. So we really value partnership, with high schools, with corporations. We have over 300 partners around the world, so we can give the students a lot of opportunity for internships, for projects, and things like that. So I think all these are with the eye of what is needed in the future and how we can help students through this journey.
Yeah, thank you all three for sharing with us about the important skills that students nowadays should be equipped with. So moving on to addressing the challenges that students are facing these days. Well, it's also very important for schools, students, and parents to adapt to new changes. So Andrew, can you tell us about the situation at YCIS? So whether the current curriculum and the learning environments needed to be revamped in order to adapt to the new normal?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, when I reflect on the past year and the challenges we've faced, you know, I really believe that we thrived during this time because of the changes that were implemented in 2014 by our CEO, Dr. Betty Chan. She introduced the learning communities model, which we've been introducing and building on every year since then. And when I'm talking about the learning communities model, it's not just how we're working as a community, but also the physical space. So since then, our whole school has been going through a renovation where we've been developing our classrooms into flexible learning spaces. So the old traditional four walls of a classroom have now gone, and we have flexible learning spaces throughout our school. And I think this really helped with the transition when we moved from face-to-face learning to online learning, because our students are used to working in different environments. They're used to being pushed out of their comfort zone, and they're resilient in the ways that they learn. And I think that they cope very well with the transition. And I think that was a key aspect of it. But also our learning communities incorporate how we work as members of staff and how we interact with the students as well. We want staff to be dynamic. We don't want their teaching to be passive. And I think that transition then between face-to-face learning, online learning, or a blended approach was quite seamless, really, because of the model that had already been implemented and been developed over these years. Now, there was a vast amount of work for teachers to do, especially for some practical subjects where it was very difficult for them without the resources. But the teachers at YCIS really pulled out all the stops, thought outside the boxes, and some of the lessons that have been taking place have really been outstanding. And the students' progress has not been negatively impacted because of that. And our results last year were fantastic. So I really believe that the changes needed to take place. But I really believe that we were already on that journey. We were already transforming not just our physical space, but the way we do things. And we were well prepared for this.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder, so Andrew or Emily, would you have anything to add on whether the current curriculum at YCIS or at HKUST has to be revamped under the new normal?
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
I mean, I think there's aspects that might need to be changed. There's obviously challenges with some practical subjects with the curriculum at the moment. And when we're looking forward to the examination session this season, the exam boards have been discussing how they might be removing specific units and condensing them. Whether this will be a catalyst for some large change will be interesting moving forward. And obviously our hands are tied to a certain extent with the exam boards that we follow at IGCSE and IB. At year 7 to 9, we've had a bespoke curriculum, and we continue to develop that every year to make sure that we're providing good service to our students. And at the moment, what we're looking to do with that is continue looking to develop the students' knowledge, continue to develop their skill set. And we're specifically looking to see how we can enhance this blended learning approach that we're obviously kind of being forced to use at the moment. But whether the IGCSE and the IB will make any drastic changes to their curriculums at the moment, that's yet to be seen. But I think that this could be a catalyst for some positive change within the education field.
In terms of the teaching and learning at HKUST, I think the pandemic actually gave us an opportunity to really further develop using technology, online learning, to not just for us to deliver the courses and the curriculum, but also to help train up our students how to face this kind of situation, because when they go out to the society, when they start working, they also have to face how to handle business continuity when there are interruptions, how to continue with their projects and their classes online. So moving through like pure online classes to how to manage hybrid teaching. So we have some students who are in the classroom, some students online, how to help students to manage, still to be able to work together across time zone using the technology tools to manage their projects. So we are trying to maintain all the teaching and learning activities while through all the interruptions to face-to-face meetings. But still, I think this really provide a catalyst for us to really invest in technology and to really help train up all our staff and our students to handle this.
Yeah, I believe these are all challenges that many different stakeholders in the sector must work together and weather through. Emily, could you also tell us more about in the higher education field? How are universities adapting their admissions in response to this new normal?
Okay. In terms of admissions, we are trying to be flexible. I think at the university sector, we understand the uncertainty, the stress the high school students face in the situation. A lot of the public exams are delayed or canceled last year. And so in terms of whole admission process, for example, the interviews are moved online. We try to be flexible with the students. We try to be flexible with the deadline, both in terms of application deadline and also acceptance deadline. We understand that with all the uncertainty, some students may change their plan later in the process. So in that sense, in terms of the assessment, of course, the criteria stay pretty much the same. In terms of academic assessment, we are more flexible. So when exams are canceled or postponed, we also look more into in-school assessment and other complementary materials that the students submit to us. But the basic criteria that we look at remain the same. The academic capabilities so that they can complete their university studies successfully, communication skill, and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to build on that, could you also share with us maybe any tips that students could learn from, maybe that the admissions team would look into when they apply for university?
Okay. Yeah, I think one aspect is very important is to really be yourself. For example, through your personal statement, through how you present your portfolio. So don't just think about checking the box. Okay, the admissions will be looking at some example of service, some example of leadership, and just sort of checking all the box. Don't be afraid to emphasize areas that really speaks to your passion, because I think for us, it is very important. We value diversity in a way. We are not looking for one specific type of student. We really value students who have passion in different areas. They have different passion projects. And one aspect is also initiative. We really look for students who will start doing something. It doesn't have to be a big scale. Some students, they might have an IG shop selling some of their own crafts and design. And this is just an example. So I think these are very important. And also, given that we are now doing a lot of online interviews, so how to prepare for that is also important. Other than normally what you would think about being dressed tidily, but also find a place that have stable internet, good lighting and things like that, where you can really focus on doing the interviews.
I think, Emily, that's a lot for students and parents to bear in mind. I'm going to return to Nick at YCIS. Can you also share with us what roles can parents perhaps play in order to help their children to decide on the right university choices?
Thank you. I mean, yes, the contribution of parents is absolutely essential, and we see it as a three-way partnership between the student, ourselves, and the parents. And I think the more encouragement parents can give, the better. Now, when I say encouragement, I mean encouragement and not nagging, okay? Because I think it's really important that parents reward the right kind of behaviors. And I think that they really have to listen. They have to listen to what motivates, what inspires. Emily was talking about their passions, if you like. What is it that excites them? Because there is an issue. Now, fortunately, it doesn't affect us here, but we do see it with a number of students who go to the US, that up to 25% of students from Asia, and that's not just Hong Kong, that's everywhere, actually give up on programs in Ivy League universities in the US because they're not really mentally and educationally prepared for what that means. So I think, or they're doing the wrong program. Someone saying you need to do economics at such and such a university, but what the student wants to do is fine art. And I think so parents need to listen. I think also they need to work closely with us, because sometimes we get parents who seem to have no idea what their sons and daughters are doing, and what excites them and what inspires them, and sometimes even which universities they're applying to. So I think if they can engage with us, that's really, really helpful. But having said that, we have a fantastic relationship, and most parents are absolutely brilliant, and they do everything that they can already to support their children. I think, again, going back to something Emily was saying earlier, I think technology is important. The more technological support that the parents can give, particularly in these times, the better. For example, I've had to conduct effectively a totally online application process with one of my students who became stranded in China. Now, as it happens, she's had 6 offers already. It's worked brilliantly, but if the technology hadn't been working, we might well have struggled.
Finding one's passion and having close engagement between parents and schools, as Nick has mentioned, is obviously very important. And to further on that, but Nick also shared with us that when it comes to university choices, apart from finding one's passion, some data that we have seen over the past few years is that in several global rankings, top universities in the Asia region has continuously been rising in terms of rankings. But as the world continues to be a bit uncertain, can Nick share with us, have you noticed any changes in students' actual choices for tertiary education?
Yeah, absolutely, and particularly in recent times. Now, there are obvious geopolitical reasons, some of which have changed quite recently for the better. But there are also issues like COVID. I think what's great from our perspective are the kinds of programs that universities are developing. And I'm not just saying this because Emily's one of our speakers, but for example, the World Bachelor in Business that HKUST offers. There, the students get to study at University of Southern California, Bocconi in Milan, and HKUST in Hong Kong. And that's a fantastic opportunity for students. And it's important that we as counsellors make this information aware to our students. Now, obviously, it's got to be appropriate for that student. But we need, as well as our students, that global awareness of what is happening. And also, one of the things that we do, particularly at the moment, is we're encouraging students not to put all their application choices, as it were, in one basket. So that is not just to apply to the UK, not just to apply to the US, not just to apply to Hong Kong, because we've seen in the last year that could be a dangerous strategy. So we've been encouraging students to do that, as have parents and the students themselves to some extent, so that whatever the outcome, then they'll find themselves a good choice. In terms of which universities and which programs to choose, that's a tremendously complicated, and that's what we spend most of our time doing. But what I would say to parents and to students is don't be driven just by league tables. League tables can tell you a certain amount about a university, but it doesn't tell you everything. And I'll just give you a very quick example. For example, you might apply to University X, which this year is number 5 in the world rankings. By the time you graduate, it could be number 25 in the world rankings. Do employers go, oh, it's 25 in the world rankings now? It was do you see what I mean? These are very broad trends. So we shouldn't be driven. What students should be driven by is the actual program itself. Does it give them the skills, the knowledge, the experience, and the judgment that will prepare them properly for the world that they're going to be employed in after they graduate. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think that's very important advice that students and parents we should note. As you mentioned, there are geopolitical reasons, maybe COVID. Looking ahead, maybe can Andrew also tell us a bit on what do you predict in the future, or maybe in the coming 1 to 2 years? Would more students maybe choose to study closer from home, given the impacts of the pandemic?
I don't think we're going to see a noticeable shift. 40% of our students last year applied to study in universities in the UK. 35% studied in Hong Kong. And then we have a range of other destinations then as well. But I don't think there's going to be a vast shift. I think in any school, you have a group of students who want to be a bit more adventurous and have this international education experience. And then you have some students that prefer to stay at home, maybe closer to their family, and continue their education there. And with our motto being that we want to raise globally competent and compassionate leaders, we do encourage students to have this global mindset and to really look globally for their next step, and to kind of push them out of their comfort zone to maybe experience something that's going to be slightly different. But I'm always extremely excited on IB Results Day when I'm stood here speaking to students who have offers from universities in the States, UK, Hong Kong, and maybe Australia. And at that moment there, they're going to be making a decision that's going to shape the rest of their lives. But I don't think we're going to see a big shift in that. I think that the students that do want to have that experience of international education will continue to seek that. I think a lot of the students really see this as being a short-term issue with COVID, and that it will resolve and things will get back to normal. But there could be a situation where there's more accessibility from the universities as well, where we're now seeing a lot of blended learning or online learning. Will it mean that universities are able to accept more students, and students are maybe attending a lot more distance courses? That might be the case. But I think in the short term, we're still going to see the normal distribution of students of where they're wishing to go.
Yeah.
Could I just add? I mean, we have seen an increase in students applying, for example, to China and Taiwan. But it's hard to say at this stage if that's just a blip which is in response to geopolitical and COVID, or whether it's actually and often these choices are backups rather than the first choices. But I think exactly as Andrew said, for the most part, we haven't seen any major changes in terms of where students apply, other than that they're applying more widely, which is sensible.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely different perspectives and different thoughts to take on from your sharing. I just wonder, Emily, in your part, from the perspective of university, do you think local universities might be benefiting from students shifting choices, or if you agree with Andrew that there won't be a lot of changes in the coming 1 to 2 years?
Well, first, I just want to echo what Nick and Andrew said earlier about absolutely very important global mindset and global outlook. I think it is really important for the young people. So even for students who, I think it's definitely great for students to have experience studying and living in different places. So even for students who come to HAUST. So that's why I think for us, it's very important to send our students out to have study abroad semester, to have overseas competition project or internship experience. So actually over half of our students will spend at least a semester outside. And also the key word is mindset, because we've seen it's not enough to just physically go to some place, because I did my graduate school in Los Angeles, and there are so many Hong Kong people there, and there are some students who just chose to stick around with people who come from the same city. Likewise, here in Hong Kong, we also see groups of students, for example, could be a group of Korean students, they just hang out and speak Korean, right? So it is a mindset. And so for us, diversity is very important. That's why we have students, so we are very much focused on international recruitment, both faculty and students. We have students from over 80 countries, faculty from over 30 countries, so that we provide this diverse and global outlook, even when students are in Hong Kong. In terms of your question about do we see that we might benefit from this disruption and more people staying, first of all, our outlook is long-term, right? We always try to further improve our quality so that we are attractive, not just because suddenly people can travel or can get a student visa, but for people to see the value. We really think that we provide absolute great value for money for the education that they can get, which is right here in Hong Kong. But I think overall, we also see that Asia is an attractive place to start their career in the next few decades. This is really the engine of growth. So Hong Kong is actually a very good place to both be in touch with international and having a lot of international experience and be able to then start their career in this region. So I think students definitely need to look beyond, wherever they are going to study, they should go beyond that one particular city or one particular university.
Yeah, thank you so much, all three panelists. There's a lot to unpack and a lot to learn from. I shall pass the time to Eva. I think we might have some Q&A questions.
Great, thank you. We do. The first question is from Katrina. Are there any considerations for people who are arts inclined? For example, is there a program that is getting structured for those who like to study dance, as you mentioned about helping the students choose their subjects? Nick, do you want to take that, or Andrew?
Just to be clear, is the question, are universities providing programs in dance, or is it about schools providing opportunities for dance?
Why don't we do both? So, for example, either Andrew or Nick can do the schools provided, and then, for example, and then Emily can talk about the universities.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've really tried to think outside the box with all of our provision and try to continue business as usual as much as possible. Sometimes some of our lessons are restricted by the space that the students have, but we have looked to try to continue as many different programs as we can. And we have a extracurricular provider who has been continuing with some of the dance sessions that they have been running, our YALC group. And they run sessions that are after school online for students if they're wishing to have any dance lessons, and also on the weekend as well. So they've been continuing them on Zoom. Obviously, there's challenges with that, but it does allow these opportunities to continue with the continued development of their skills.
We are called the University of Science and Technology. Well, we don't have a major in arts or dance, but we do provide a lot of opportunities in our Common Core program and in our co-curricular program. So we actually have very interesting arts classes in the Common Core program for the students to take. And nowadays, actually, digital arts is actually getting very popular as well. We are developing a minor in media and digital arts. And for dance, well, we have Dance Society. I was a student from HAUSD, 20 years ago. And we have a Dance Society. We have lots of cultural arts activities on campus. We really appreciate students involved.
She also asked another question. In terms of flexible learning spaces, online learning does require gadgets, but I'm curious about what are the thoughts around families who may need to have one gadget for each child. So an example is, so if a family has a few kids, they would need obviously a few gadgets, but as far as facilities are concerned, would you be aiding this provision? Because this kind of stress may be another culprit to a student's ability to capture the lessons delivered via online education. Very good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, we already had a one-to-one device policy implemented in YCIS. So every student already had an iPad. We're already using Google Classroom. So when we moved to online, it was just Zoom was the new tool that the students were using. Everything else was already set up. So we're able to communicate with the students on Google Classroom and share resources and move seamlessly onto that. And having the policy already of one device allowed us to start the very first day, and we didn't have any challenges with students having to share with their siblings, for example.
Okay, great. David Cito asked, hi there, how do teachers deal with the vast amount of answers to homework assignments available online when it's so easy for students to share homework via online platform or simply ask Siri or some other AI program? Very good question.
Yeah, it's actually very easy to see when students have been using those programs as well. You know, teachers have a very detailed knowledge of the students in their classes and the ability of the students. So when they do produce work, it's very easy to see if that's a reflection of the actual students' ability, or whether they may be using something to supplement that as well. But it's important that, you know, teachers use different strategies when they're in the class as well to gauge how students are progressing. And, you know, obviously the homework and the assignments that are set for students following the lessons are there to further develop the knowledge and the skills that they're learning in the lesson. So, you know, it's important that teachers are vigilant regarding aspects like this. You know, we use plagiarism tools within schools like Turnitin so that we can identify whether this is a plagiarized answer for different assignments that are used as well. So although it might seem that this is us trying to keep up with technology, we also have ways that we can identify it as well. So it's not an issue that we really have to deal with.
Okay.
I think sorry, just to say something on that. I mean, this isn't an issue just for schools. It's an issue for universities. When I was teaching in the university sector, you know, we had the same problem. And I think this is where the learning communities and the project-based learning actually comes in, because it's very difficult to plagiarize in a context where you're having to work as part of a team and to present your result together. What we're trying not to do is to get away as much as we can, whilst obviously fulfilling the examination requirements, for students memorizing the answers to questions. It's about being able to solve problems. And either the student can do it or the student can't. And I think it's not something which they can teach.
Absolutely agree. I think it is an opportunity for educators to really rethink how do we do assessments, you know, other than trying to catch students from copying, you know, or asking Siri, but also fundamentally what should be assessed and how do we assess those skills. So I think with the pandemic, actually it accelerated that reflection among the educators.
And also with our learning communities, project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, what we're really looking for the students to do is obviously to gain the knowledge, but to then put it into their own context. So they're not particularly able to just Google a specific answer and then be able to manipulate that into their project. You know, they have to really think about this and really carve out answers of their own that will fit in with the context of their project.
Okay, Su Yan has also asked, what is that makeup in terms of, I guess she's asking about applications. So she's asking are we seeing more U.S. applications? She said, I can't imagine an increase in international students at the time, given that the government administration had not changed at a time of application. Very interesting question.
I don't know whether I can answer that for you. We haven't seen so far an increase in US applications at all. In fact, if anything, we've seen a slight shrinkage in US applications. It's hard to say exactly what the cause of that might be. Certainly, we did see during the Trump era, we did see a very obvious decline in US applications. I would say whether that will change now with the change of administration in the US. There's always a lag between the geopolitical events and then the popular response to those. Yes, we have seen a slight decline, but I think inevitably, you know, there are excellent US universities. There are excellent programs in the US as there are in the UK and in Hong Kong and Singapore and Japan. And students, I think, will continue to apply for those programs, particularly where those students may already have country connections. So, for example, you know, Toronto, you can probably see it behind me here, University of Toronto, we have a lot of students who are very interested in Canada. You know, their parents or they've got Canadian passports or Canadian connections. And the same is true of the US, the UK, and so on. So I don't think we'll see massive changes. Unless something particularly apps like made today.
Okay, in 30 seconds or less for an answer, the question is, nowadays, the world is thriving with content creation. Is there a program that caters to this? 30 seconds, go, Emily.
Content creation. Well, this question is a little bit broad. Well, we do have program for students to customize what they want to do. So we have a individualized interdisciplinary major. So in terms of these new careers, content creator, and also I learned about graphics recorder, which is very interesting. Students, when they listen to webinars like this, they can create a very nice graphics representation. So it's more about through the curricular program, because I think that students have a lot of opportunity to, for example, to co-create social media content with us, because we have a lot of student ambassadors who work with us in terms of diversity recruitment. So all these are opportunities for students to use their creativity and these skills creating.
Great. That it seems to be all the time that we have. I would like to thank Andrew, Nick, and Professor Emily for their valuable insights, and Thomas for moderating the panel. The conversation doesn't end here. Join us on Facebook and connect with other parents. Scan the QR code that you see on the screen right now. And of course, we also want to say thank you to all our sponsors and strategic partners. Thank you.